At the helm.
Larson tried to go to the middle. Oh, he got turned.
Larson Pastrana in the fence. We are
Keselowski
still
out.
green. No, the caution is out. Keselowski with him. McDowell in tow. Dillon on the bottom.
The run's on top.
Whoa!
Teammates.
Around they go in a hard crash. Kyle Busch. Ryan Newman off turn 4 for the final time. Blaney to the outside, to the inside. Here comes Hamlin up the outside.
Wow.
Crash into the wall, into the air. Goes Newman.
Upside down.
In a shower of sparks on his roof, Ryan Newman comes across the line, 4th, and comes to rest. Scoring unofficial.
The Daytona 500 has a problem. Now you may be wondering, what am I talking about? For many NASCAR fans, they consider it the biggest race on the entire schedule. Over 150,000 people go to it every year. And it's still the most watched race on all of TV, beating the Indianapolis 500. But there is a problem. And it stems from a problem that NASCAR could easily fix. Let's start with the last few runnings of the 500, all the way back in 2021. Everyone remembers this finish with the massive crash at the end, taking out the entire field, and Michael McDowell coming through, beating Chase Elliott under caution. It was an emotional moment for McDowell, and it got him his first career victory in over 10 years running the Cup Series. That sounds great. Then the next year, another driver came to the checkered flag after a huge crash behind him as they came across the start-finish line and won his first career race, being Austin Cindric. Okay, so back-to-back years. In 2023, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won his third career race and his first in over 5 years as the entire field wrecked behind him and he got to the start-finish line under caution. People breaking long winless streaks in the 500 is not a new thing. It's been going on for years. The 1963 running of the Daytona 500 saw Tiny Lynn win his first career race. 1990 saw Derek Cope win after Dale Earnhardt blew a tire. Heck, in 2001, Michael Waltrip won after 462 Cup starts. The problem is, all those came across 55 years. When you want an underdog victory of the 500, you don't want it to be common. You don't want it to be something that happens every year, because if it happens every year, it becomes meaningless. All 3 of the drivers that have won the last 3 500s haven't won since. Something that has never happened in the entire sport of NASCAR. And if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. doesn't win by the end of this year, which is not completely out of question, it becomes the first time in history that in 3 consecutive seasons, the Daytona 500 winner didn't go on to win at least one more race in the regular season. Another problem with this is something that we saw back in 2011. Trevor Bayne won the Daytona 500 in an absolute underdog upset. It was a great moment for the Wood Brothers team, and it's a highlight of the last 10 years of the Daytona 500. However, it basically killed Trevor Bayne's career. Escalated him into having some of the highest expectations any driver has ever seen at that age, being the youngest 500 winner ever. He would go on to finally get up to Cup Series full-time racing in 2014, and go on to have very minimal success as Roush Racing deteriorated slowly until he was kicked out of the 6 car in 2018. The only thing he's really done after 2018 was in 2022 he ran a bunch of Xfinity races for Joe Gibbs Racing. On top of all of that, Trevor Bayne also was in a club of only 9 drivers to have won the 500, but then never finished top 10 in Cup Series points in a season ever. Of those 9 drivers, the other ones are these: Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt. Those are outliers, obviously, so those kind of don't count. Pete Hamilton, Derek Cope, Michael Waltrip, Trevor Bayne, Michael McDowell, and Austin Cindric. Now, if you know something unique about all those drivers, they all got their first career victory in the Daytona 500. It is not a good thing to get your first career win in the Daytona 500. Your expectations get elevated so high that you can never fulfill them. And to be frank, it should be a rarity to get your first career victory in the Daytona 500. And it was for years. Between the years of 1959 and 2000, the first 42 runnings of the Great American Race, a driver got their first career victory in the race only 4 times. In the last 23, it's happened 5. And in those first 4, one of them that did it was Mario Andretti, who did it in the one-off. So technically it's 3 in the first 40, and then 5 in the last 20. Now, how is this happening? How are drivers winning their first career race more and more and more? Well, it comes down to how we end the races. In 2005, the first ever green-white checker happened in the Daytona 500. Jeff Gordon won that one. Since then, green-white checkers have happened nearly every year in the 500. Almost every season, the Daytona 500 will end with a green-white checker. And what usually causes that is crashes. On top of that, the last time the Daytona 500 finish didn't involve a crash was 2019, making it so next spring, when we run the Daytona 500 again, it'll be 5 years since we had our last somewhat clean Daytona 500 finish. And let's look at that 2019 finish, where Denny Hamlin got his second career victory. Right before that, in that green-white checker, a huge crash took out the entire field, leading to only having a very few amount of cars finishing the race. In 2018, Eric Almirola got dumped by Austin Dillon to win his second race of his career and first Daytona 500. And in 2017, there was no crash at the finish, and there was no crash before the finish. But most of the cars were heavily damaged, and it turned into a fuel mileage race because of various crashes throughout the day earlier in the race, taking out a majority of the field and damaging most of them to be under race pace. 2016 then would sit as the last Daytona 500 without any enormous incident that damaged over half the field and threatened the finish. That means it's been almost a decade. Almost a decade since we've had a clean Daytona 500 finish. On top of that, the last 6 years the Daytona 500 has had a problem of just cars getting taken out. This year alone, we took out 19 cars in post 500 mile overtime crashes, making it so at least half the field was damaged. And all those crashes were caused because one car spun on the apron coming to 2 to go. In my honest opinion, green-white checkers and overtimes need to go in the 500. And at all plate racing, a matter of fact. It has caused constant chaos and horrible results. The only iconic moment that an overtime finish has caused in the last 16 years of this sport was in 2020, and it wasn't a good one. In nearly every finish of the Daytona 500 that had a green-white checker finish, the actual winner was leading at the time of the caution that went over the 500 mile mark. It's not a bad thing to end a race under a caution. It isn't. Matter of fact, the last few 500s have ended under caution. We just wreck a bunch of cars to get to it. Let's just get done with it. It's over. Don't let people sit around for an extra hour post-race under red flag and yellow flag conditions just so we can send them around one time and then they go into turn one and we stack up half the field again. Another thing we can get rid of is stages. Stages have drastically affected the strategy and the development of a race throughout its entire span. It makes it so no driver can really dominate the entire thing, or we can have developing storylines between certain drivers battling one another through the entire day. They all usually get taken out during some point in one of those stage finishes or in one of those green-white checkered finishes. Prior to 2005 with green-white checkers, a driver leading 10 laps or less and winning the 500 only happened 4 times. Since 2005, it's happened 10 times. Nearly half the races are won by a guy who leads less than 25 miles of a 500 mile race. Is that bad? No. Let's say a guy leads over 100 laps and gets taken out with 20 to go. It makes the entire rest of the race feel pointless. Let possibly one of the fastest drivers all day actually have a chance to win it, instead of just getting taken out every single time he gets close to the finish because someone doesn't want to lift for a block. And while we like these dramatic moments where the dominant car all day gets taken out, prior to 2017 in the stage era, a guy leading only a single lap in the Daytona 500 winning it, well, it never happened. Then, in the first year of it, Kurt Busch led 1 lap and won the Daytona 500. Okay, well, it's under fuel mileage. That's a pretty cool last lap pass. Okay. Then it happened again in 2018 when Austin Dillon drove through Eric Almirola down the backstretch. Okay, well then Micah McDowell did the same exact thing pretty much in 2021 and won it again by only leading a single lap. In total, it's happened 4 times in the last 7 years. It's not a bad thing to happen, but just like a first-time winner, it needs to be a rarity. It can't just keep happening. Once it does, when you go to a Daytona 500, you're just going to know that it's going to happen. There's no point to watch the rest of the race. Watch only the last 10 laps. None of the stuff prior to that's going to matter. That's the problem with the 500. The gimmicks we put throughout the sport have corrupted every facet of how we try to award the winner of that race. It used to be a great way to try and start off your season. At least every 5 years or so, if you won the Daytona 500, you would win the championship. That hasn't happened in 10 years now. That's the longest streak ever in 500 history. And then you couple it with the fact that over the last 6 seasons, the Daytona 500 winner has an average points finish of 11th. It's meaningless. And now the TV providers don't even talk about the Daytona 500 winner now. It feels almost like just another race, which it shouldn't. It's the Daytona 500. It's a great American race. It's got more prestige than any stock car race in the world. It's time we let the Daytona 500 be just about the racing. No stages, no overtimes, just let them go for 500 miles. I think personally, without a doubt, that would restore the prestige the race has. It would restore the quality of racing that race should have, and it would let the Great American Race be about the Great American Race.